Hi everybody. Today I'd like to talk about the new used camera that I have, how much I like full frame better than crop sensor cameras. And I'm gonna just illustrate what the difference is. Full frame cameras being say an old Canon 6D that I just got versus my other older cameras such as a Canon Rebel T5i, which has a cropped sensor. What is a crop sensor? Well, it's a camera with a smaller sensor. That's basically it. Pretty simple. So obviously a bigger sensor is always going to be better than a smaller sensor. Well, why didn't they call it a small sensor instead of calling it a crop sensor? Well, back in the old days, when we used to shoot film, 35 millimeter film was a standard. 35 millimeter film has become a standard size, and they needed to reproduce that electronic sensor at the same size. But obviously they realized that if they made the sensor at the full frame size, 35 millimeter size, which you see here in this picture comparing the green part of the sensor on the right that says full frame, is the same size as what a 35 millimeter film camera size is. So if they made a sensor at that size and sell it to the consumer, the camera would cost $2,000-3,000, and no enthusiast, which is the general public, can afford a camera that expensive. So somebody came up with the idea and say, you know what? We'll make a smaller sensor because it's cheaper that way, and then we can sell these cameras for under $1,000, and people can afford it. We'll just give them a smaller sensor because it's cheaper to make a smaller sensor. And so therefore they made a smaller sensor, and you could see here on the left side under the crop sensor is the green part is considerably smaller. What is the difference when you take a picture? Well, obviously, you know, the full sensor, full frame sensor is gonna take in more light. Then more light means more information. So what happens is the sensor doesn't change in the crop sensor camera in terms of the sensor technology. If you look at it under a microscope, the sensor is going to contain just as much information as the full frame, except that the picture is the sensor is smaller. So when you project a lens onto the two cameras, provided that you didn't move the positioning of the camera in terms of where you're standing, where you're holding a camera and where you're standing, and you use the exact same lens, let's say it's a fixed lens, for the sake of this video, this image that's being projected on is going to be rotated so that we can see the image better. Otherwise, the picture should be upside down. So here is the picture of the kitchen being projected onto the sensor. So now, as you can see, when using the same lens projected onto the two different cameras, the one on the right having a bigger sensor will capture more of the kitchen, whereas the one on the left, because the sensor is smaller, it's just going to capture less of the kitchen. So what happens is with this grid that I put on top of these sensors, you will see that the squares on the grid are the same size because the physical microscopically, when you look at this under a microscope, the physical parts of the sensor isn't going to, in the crop sensor, isn't going to capture more light than the full frame. It's a smaller sensor. So you could see in this case that the smaller sensor is capturing less of the image, and second, there's less information in the smaller sensor. So if you look at it this way, um, it actually is, if you move the crop sensor image over to the full frame image, you would see that it is the exact same image except it's cropped. There's less of an image all around because it's a smaller sensor. And that is why we keep on calling these camera a crop sensor camera. And that is why. And obviously, if you take this image from the crop sensor and you not going to view it like this with the blank space around it, so you're going to enlarge it back to the size of the screen. Whether you're going to enlarge it back to the screen size of the camera, or you're going to enlarge the smaller size back to the same size as a 5x7 print, for example. So you're going to get a you're going to get less pixel and less information blown up, because now you're stretching this image bigger. So obviously when you stretch the image bigger, it's not going to be as sharp of an image. It's not going to capture as much light in this image, and it's not going to have as much dynamic range, which is the information that you will get in the shadows are going to be less, and the information you're going to get in the bright colors of your photo is going to be less, because this simply is a smaller image. And that is going to be always inferior to full frame cameras. So well, you say, well, what if you back up? If you walk a few feet backwards and you take the same picture? Well, yeah, you can walk a few feet backwards and take the same picture. That is if you have enough room. Let's say you're in a very small room and you have a 50 lens, and sometimes you can't go back because there's a wall in the way. And if you do go back and you take the picture, you will get, the exact same picture, but obviously it's going to be at a lower resolution, because even though you walk backwards and you take the same picture, but because you're enlarging all of those pixels using a smaller sensor, when you enlarge those pixels, you're going to enlarge all the grains. You're going to enlarge all the shadows. That's not going to be very sharp, because when the camera takes a picture in the shadows, sometimes it doesn't see what's in the shadow, and it just places a lot of color noise, like dots of green, dots of blue, and dots of red color in the shadow, because it just doesn't have enough sensor to capture. So there you have it, different sizes sensors. Obviously it's better to buy a full frame if you can afford it. The colors is so much better, especially in low light. It captures so much better than the crop sensor cameras. So there you go, here's the difference. I hope you enjoy this, and have a nice day. Thanks. Bye.